Trying to hear the least to everyone.
Okay, I think I've sorted it. Hopefully. You guys haven't noticed by now, I hate technology. This setup is just ridiculous. But anyway, that's fine.
It just seems overly complicated.
Oh, isn't it?
Like the most screens.
Okay, that's off. Now I'm muted. I've got my mic on, I've got my camera on, you guys can see me there. Hopefully we can see on the recording. Now that it is recording, I've definitely got a red dot there. Okay. So let's get started now that we're a little bit late, sorry. We are on to our last session of this 3-week group. So thank you guys for coming along. If you've joined in online or if you've been here in person, that's really good. I am going to send out a survey to everybody after this session. So if you guys can have a look at it, it'll only take a couple of minutes. I think it's 5 or 6 questions that are just sort of tick boxes really. But this is the first time that we're running the 3-week group instead of the 5 weeks, and it's the first time I've done it over the weekend instead of a weeknight class. So just wanting to get some ideas on how you guys what you thought about that. So yeah, I'll send that out in the next few days or so, and if you can get it back to me, that would be awesome. Today we're finishing off, so we're basically just going on about the newborn now. So we've talked about normal birth, we've talked about interventions and C-sections and all that sort of thing. Now we're sort of, you've had your baby, what do we do with it? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about feeding, newborn senses, brain development, all that kind of cool stuff. So we're going to start off with feeding stuff, and I'll just put my phones on silent. I think I forgot to last week. So there's lots and lots of different reasons why babies want to feed. It's not always just about nutrition. So some babies need to be settled. Some babies want to breastfeed quite often. Some babies cry a lot despite whatever you're doing to help that. And that's okay. Some babies want to be held a lot. Some babies are hard to read. Some babies don't sleep a lot. So every baby's a little bit different, and you just sort of work on your individual situation and what your baby responds to, and you'll work that out over time as well. So it's not, obviously they don't come with manuals, but there is a little bit of a sort of checklist to go through if your baby is unsettled or crying, and sometimes that takes a couple of times to run through that checklist a couple of times before you work out what the problem is and get it fixed. So when babies are crying, they're communicating, they're not manipulating, and they don't have the capacity to manipulate in that newborn stage. So, you know, things like methods like crying it out and things like that are not appropriate for a newborn. Babies are crying because they need something, even if that's just a cuddle or to know that you're there and that they're safe. So new mums are often told that when they have fed, burped and changed their baby, they should leave them alone to self-soothe if they cry, because all of their needs have been met. One day I hope all new mothers will be able to smile confidently and say, I gave birth to a baby, not just a digestive system. My baby has a brain that needs to learn trust and a heart that needs love. I'll meet all of my baby's needs, mental, emotional, and physical, and I'll respond to every cry because crying is communication, not manipulation. Okay. Obviously, once we get down the track a little bit, you know, that self-soothing and crying it out and things like that, that potentially could become more appropriate. But certainly in that newborn stage, those first couple of months or so is not appropriate and not, I suppose, good management and good response to a baby crying. So, breastfeeding is a highly emotive topic. We do support all mothers here, and we want you to have the most up-to-date and informed background coming into deciding how you're going to feed your baby. Gone are the days of breast is best and that sort of thing. We just want your baby to be fed. Fed is best. We're happy with that. In saying that, our sites are all breastfeeding friendly or baby friendly hospitals. So that goes through quite rigorous accreditation. It means that we do have to promote breastfeeding as best option and give you lots of support and lots of education and lots of encouragement for that route. In saying that, if you choose to formula feed or you choose to mix feed or you want to bottle feed breast milk, go for it. Like I said, as long as your baby's fed and happy and putting on weight, we're happy. So you do you. But we are going to focus a lot on breastfeeding today as well. So like I said, they don't always cry or want to feed just because of the food aspect. Breast milk and just feeding in general offers lots of different benefits as well. So it can help if baby is sad or unwell or in pain. Breast milk is a really good pain relief. So we often say, like, for those 6-week immunizations, for example, you can give your baby Panadol for sure, but a breastfeed is just as good pain relief in a lot of circumstances too. Babies will feed more if they need more of a milk supply, so they can pick up on that supply. And usually around 6 weeks is when a baby will have their first growth spurt, and they might become really fussy and feeding a lot around that time. That's because they're trying to boost that milk supply to keep up with their needs and their growth. If they just want extra love and cuddles and, like I said, making sure that they know that they're safe and secure, or if they need help settling or just fussy, they'll often feed. All right, so it's not just food, it's also hydration as well. So you think about that's for a baby that's breastfeeding, they don't have water on top of that. We don't recommend water on top, so they get hydration and nutrition from that as well. So we'll talk a little bit about some supports, but the ABA is something that we definitely refer to quite a lot. So that's the Australian Breastfeeding Association. They've got quite a good website that you can refer to. Their pages are quite short, very simple. They're made for sleep-deprived breastfeeding parents. So they're all quite easy to read, and there's heaps and heaps of different information on there. So stuff like introducing your solids, going back to work, all of those sorts of things, or even just breast engorgement or weaning off a nipple shield or things like that. So lots of different other aspects to breastfeeding other than literally just putting your baby on your boob. Okay. So the World Health Organization does recommend exclusive breastfeeding, so no other fluids or solids for 6 months, and then continuing to breastfeed with adding in solids as well for about 2 years, or as long as you guys want. So that's the recommendation from the World Health Organization. But obviously your goals might be different to that as well. So if you only want to breastfeed for 3 months, that's totally fine. Realistically, that's better than nothing. But if you want to breastfeed for 4 years, go for it. It's your own choice. So yeah, there's a little funny one there about baby getting too old to breastfeed, or a toddler. So this is the 10 steps to successful breastfeeding, and there is a copy here for you guys to see a bit better. You want to have a little look through. It's a bit hard to read up here, but this is basically just hospital policy for these breastfeeding friendly hospitals or baby friendly hospitals. So we've got our hospital policies, which is that BFHI, the breastfeeding friendly, I think it's actually baby friendly, so I should stop saying breastfeeding. Baby friendly hospital initiative. Our policies include things like the baby has to stay in the room with you guys while you're an inpatient in the hospital. That's so that you can keep an eye on your baby and you know when they want to feed and that sort of thing. So that's part of our policies. Staff competency, obviously we want to make sure all of our staff is up to date and educated and looking after you as well as they can be. Antenatal care, so that includes our classes here today, but also the education that you do with your midwife. Care right after birth, so we'll talk a little bit about that first initial period after baby's born, so those first couple of hours and those couple of days that you're in hospital. God, I can't even read that. Support mothers with breastfeeding. Yeah. So that that encompasses quite a few things, obviously, but that support and encouragement and helping you, you know, you might need some extra equipment with helping you breastfeed and things like that as well. Supplementing, so if we need to add in extra bits and pieces, extra techniques or equipment, then we can do that, and that will help with that breastfeeding journey. Rooming in, that's the one that I was just telling you about, that the baby needs to stay in the room with you. Responsive feeding, so we really recommend on-demand feeding. So when your baby's hungry and crying, feed them. They're not on a time schedule or anything like that, especially our babies who are, you know, if they're here or if they're in the community, if they're at home with you, they're typically low risk. We're not too worried about, you know, low blood sugars or, you know, feeding quotas or anything like that, especially initially. So, yeah, we're really just feeding the baby for as long as they want, as frequently as they want. Bottles, teats, and pacifiers, they are all discouraged until your breastfeeding is really well established, and the evidence says that can take 6 to 8 weeks before it's really well established and underway. So for that amount of time, we don't recommend any dummies or teats or anything like that. They're shaped differently to the nipple, and it's a different type of sucking for the baby. So if the baby hasn't worked out breastfeeding well, introducing that dummy or teat, there's an old term called nipple confusion. It's a bit outdated now, but it's the same sort of thing. They can get a little bit confused, not breastfeed effectively, and then that leads on to more issues or complications or complexities, I suppose. And then discharge. So discharge from our care. So we see you for up to 6 weeks after your baby's born, and then we discharge you on. And obviously, you've still got a baby to look after, don't you? So we want you to be as prepared and know where to go for help and things like that as possible. So that's our 10 steps in a nutshell. Hopefully, it gives you the best start to breastfeeding. So if we look at the anatomy of a breast, we've got the yellow tissue is basically just fat tissue, right? And you can have more of that or less of that, doesn't really affect your breastfeeding capacity. The greenish blue sort of bits in there, that is your like milk ducts and milk glands and things like that. So they kind of run as tubes. You can kind of see those brown lines that run through those ducts and that glandular tissue through to the nipple, okay? And then that's where the milk comes out of the nipple. So if you think about the shape of your boob and the size of your boob like that, those milk ducts run right back even towards under your armpit and things like that. So when we talk about blocked ducts and mastitis and that sort of thing, some people can get swollen ducts under their armpits, and that's just really sort of far back milk ducts basically that have gotten blocked. So they do run all the way back in the breast. So when we talk about latching your baby or even hand expressing milk and things like that, if your baby is sucking right on the end of the nipple, it's not stimulating any of that blue-green area there and not draining any of that milk. They might get a couple of drops here and there, enough to sort of go, oh, okay, something's going on, but certainly not enough to make them full, give them a proper feed, and make them gain weight. So they need to be stimulating further back. We want most of that areola in their mouth. When we talk about latch as well, if you run your tongue along the top of your mouth and go right to the back, there's a little ledge, and it goes from like a hard, quite solid palate to your soft palate at the back. And that's where you want the end of your nipple, right in that soft palate at the back of the baby's mouth. Because if that nipple is sitting in that hard palate, it's just going to be sort of crunching, and that's when we end up with cracks and blisters and all sorts on the nipple. Okay, so that's another like on the flip side of that one for you guys as well. So you want lots of that nipple and breast tissue in baby's mouth to get a really good feed. So that blue green sort of area there, glandular tissue, mammary glands holds all structures that make the milk. So they produce the milk, but it doesn't actually store in the breast. It's kind of made on demand, right? Fatty tissue is that yellow bit that I said. So that just gives structure and protection to those glands in there and those milk ducts. And the areola, which is the outside part of the nipple. The nipple is just the end, or end bit there. So what changes have you noticed? Is there anything that you've noticed around your nipple that's different? Bigger? Yeah. Darker? Yep, absolutely. Why is that? Why does that happen in pregnancy? Yeah, basically. So babies, their sight is quite underdeveloped at birth, and they really respond to contrast. So that darker skin around the nipple and the areola is sort of like an X marks the spot for them. So they can see that, latch onto it, and instincts kick in and go, that's where I need to be. Okay. So it's just a hormonal change. Once you have finished breastfeeding or you choose not to breastfeed, those nipples do go back to pre-pregnancy sort of state. Alveoli, so they are sort of at the ends of those little fronds, I suppose, down the milk ducts. Sorry, they're like a little cluster of no, that doesn't show very well. Little cluster of sacs that make the milk, and they do store a little bit of milk. Okay, so when the baby sucks, those squeeze together and it pushes the milk out those ducts and out of the nipple. Okay. And then we've got Montgomery glands, which are little bumps on the outside of the nipple and around the nipple and the areola. And they create a lubricant to keep it sort of nice and slippery and clean while your baby's feeding. So that's pretty cool. In the nipple, lots of duct openings. That's really straightforward. And the milk ducts, which I've talked about already. So that's those brown sort of wavy lines there. They only transport the milk, they don't store it. Okay. So obviously you don't need to remember all of this. You don't need to know the names of it all or anything like that. But having a little bit of idea of what actually happens in your breast can give you a bit more of an idea of how your baby's feeding and how they latch and that sort of thing. Like I said, if they're too shallow, they're not getting all of that milk from in those milk ducts. If they're on there a little bit better, then they're actually draining the milk out properly. Okay. So have you guys heard of the letdown reflex?
A little bit, yeah, when sort of baby cries and then you get sore boobs and
Yeah. So it can happen when a baby cries and when you hear that stimulant as well, but it most often happens while you're feeding. So you'll get to a point in your breastfeed where your milk sort of changes a little bit, and it's a bit faster flow and all that sort of thing. So it kind of just like kicks in a little bit. That's that reflex. You can also get it if your baby is feeding on your right side. You can get it on the left side, and you start leaking out the left as well. So lots of people collect that milk and save it for a bottle feed later on, or just put into the bath, or breast milk's really good for like gunky eyes and things like that too. So the baby sucks on the mother's breast to receive the breast milk. Baby sucking triggers nerve cells in the nipple, signaling to the brain to release the hormone oxytocin. We talked about that one quite a bit in the first session, I think it was, which is that love hormone. So you can see up in the top left, responsible for your uterine contractions, so your labor contractions. Also needed to contract the cells in the breast to get the milk out of the breast. So because of that reason, you can have tummy cramps while you're breastfeeding as well, especially in the first few days. So those sort of afterbirth pains can be quite crampy while you're feeding, especially because of this. So your milk ducts widen and muscles around the milk cells contract due to the oxytocin, so they squeeze together, and the breast milk comes out of the milk ducts into the baby's mouth, and then that cycle continues on. So prolactin is a hormone responsible for making milk. It peaks with well-drained breasts and overnight. And the more you feed, or the more well-drained your breast is, the more you make. So with that, we say to keep the baby on one side until that breast is fully drained, or until that baby is sort of pulling itself off or falling asleep. And then we often say to offer the opposite side as well, just in case they want that little bit of top up, or a little bit more of the sort of watery hydration feed after having the big feed. So we'll talk a little bit about the composition of your milk as well, and that might make a little bit more sense to you as well. But we want to fully drain your breasts, and you'll feel the difference in terms of how full your boobs feel before and after a feed and that sort of thing too. Okay. And that will help to keep your supply up. That one might be a bit hard for you guys to read, sorry. Some mothers feel they're let down. Some just notice the milk coming out and the baby's suck changes and they hear the baby swallowing. And there's more than just the first letdown in a feed. So babies often will slow down their sucking a little bit when the letdown reflex kicks in. And that's because that milk is flowing a little bit faster, a little bit easier, so they don't need to work quite so hard. Okay. So like I said, it doesn't necessarily matter how much fatty tissue we have. All breasts are designed to breastfeed, so it doesn't matter what size breasts you've got. You'll still have enough glandular tissue to make that breast milk. Okay. And for different size boobs, there's different positions for baby to feed in that work a little bit better as well. So for women that might have quite big boobs, or they might hang down a little bit lower or whatever, they might find that the football hold, so holding baby sort of under your arm, wrapped around your body, that kind of works a little bit better than for people with smaller breasts. And we can work on that case by case sort of situation. And everybody's nipples are a little bit different as well. So it is breastfeeding. So what your nipples look like, or how they appear, is not super important. It is recommended to start getting used to actually holding and handling your breasts. It's not something that people necessarily do, except I guess in a sexual way. But while you're breastfeeding, obviously it becomes quite a natural, normal thing to be doing, and there's sometimes quite a bit of manipulation of your boobs that needs to occur to actually get baby latched properly. So if that's something that you go, I don't really, it weirds you out or whatever, might be worth getting a bit more comfortable with your body now. If you feel like your nipples are a little bit flat, that's okay. Lots of stimulation and hand expressing can often make those nipples pop out a little bit and can make the baby, can make it easier for the baby to latch. And if you have any concerns, talk to your midwife. Let us know what's going on. So it's a bit of a blurry photo there, sorry, but it's a really good demonstration of what your milk sort of looks like. So you guys would be starting to produce milk already, whether you would, if you gave it a go and hand expressing, you probably wouldn't be able to actually express anything out. But it's there and it's starting to get the job done, I suppose. And those milk ducts are practicing their job, I suppose. So your colostrum is the first phase of your breast milk, I guess I would say. And that lasts until about day 3 or 4. And I think we talked last week about that day 3 or 4, your milk changes, and your milk comes in. And that often coincides with that baby blues day and everything's sort of going on that day. So for those first few days and late in pregnancy, you start producing colostrum, which is quite thick, really yellow colour, small amount. So it's only a very tiny amount and might only be a few mils. And that is because your baby has a tiny, tiny tummy at that stage. So we call that liquid gold, that stuff, colostrum. So good. So even if you're hand expressing and you don't end up giving it to your baby as a feed, it's really good in their bath. It's good for their skin. Got lots and lots of antibodies in that. So on day 1, your baby's tummy is about the size of a marble. So it holds around 5 mils of milk at each feed. Okay.
Oh, it's adorable.
It's tiny, isn't it? Yeah. So if you think about I guess think about movies and things like that when they give the babies like a full bottle of milk straight off the bat and things like that. That's not going to hold a tiny little tummy. It's not going to hold any more than a couple of mils of milk at a time. So if we're breastfeeding at the breast, obviously we don't know the volume that's going into bubs, but that will give you a bit of an idea of how much they're actually getting. So it's really not very much at all. You can see that on there. So about 5 mils. That's emptied quite often, obviously. So babies are weaning quite a bit. So they feed quite a bit as well. So they're not as settled for as long. All right. So babies feed roughly around 2 to 3 hourly. Once your milk comes in and things change, they might have bigger breaks overnight, or they might stretch out for a little bit. But still sort of 3 to 4 hourly, especially through the day, is quite normal. So like I said, production starts in pregnancy, high in antibodies, really small amount, helps get baby's gut moving. And it transitions around day 3 to 4. So you've got 5 days and 6 days there. That's starting to change a little bit. You're getting a lot more volume. That's your transitional milk. So it's starting to lighten in colour just slightly. But the main thing is the volume that just kicks off quite a bit. So like I said, around that day 3 or 4, you might wake up with quite heavy or sore boobs. And that's that milk coming in and changing. So obviously still really good in antibodies and good nutrition and everything for bubs. And then we move into that mature milk, which looks a bit more like your cow's milk, like creamy white, lots and lots of it usually. Okay, so milk supply becomes well established about 2 weeks in, high in carbs, fats and proteins. And that little bit up the top there that said breast milk is dynamic. Every feed is different and it does change to baby's needs. So it's really interesting because when you are breastfeeding your baby, your nipples have got like receptors in the cells that respond to the chemical compound in baby's saliva. So if your baby is lacking in certain nutrients or is a bit sick, your breast milk will change within a few feeds to accommodate for that. So that actual skin to skin breastfeeding straight at the boob is really important for that, because if you are expressing milk, or obviously if you're formula feeding, your baby's missing out on that dynamic change as well, because you're not getting that feedback loop in your body. So that's really cool. So if we think about how the milk is, the composition of the milk. So colostrum is pretty much colostrum. That's just what it is. It's all sort of one composition there. But when we're talking about mature milk, there's sort of two parts to it. So there's foremilk, which is quite watery and good for hydration. So that's the first part of the milk that's coming out at the start of a feed. And you'll notice in the hot weather, if you're feeding a baby during hot weather, they'll have shorter, more frequent feeds because they're trying to get more of this hydrating milk, right? The watery stuff. Because like I said, we're not giving our breastfed babies any water. So they get all of that from the milk. So if they're having just the first part of the feed quite often, they're keeping their hydration up. Okay. If your baby continues on and feeds for a longer period of time, drains the breast, they're getting both of these parts of the milk. So they're getting this hind milk as well, which is really rich in fat and calories, and that's what they use to gain their weight and to grow. Okay, so it is really important that Bubs gets that whole feed and drains the breast for that reason, because we need that hind milk for baby to put on weight. Okay, so if you think your foremilk is a bit like entree, your hind milk is a bit like your main, and then like I said, we offer the second side, and they'll usually have that foremilk again on the second side, and that's like dessert or a drink to go with your main meal sort of thing. Okay. Wash it all down. It's all nutritional, but that hind milk is what's really important for growth. Okay. Let the baby lead the feed, and they'll tell you when they're finished feeding. Okay. So we talked about day one, tummy size of a marble, holds 5 meals of milk. By day 3, a little bit of a bigger marble there, holds about 25 meals of milk. So that's in 3 days. It's what, times by 5? So going from 5 meals to 25 meals in 3 days, they're quite rapidly increasing. And remember, day 3 or day 4 is about when your milk changes as well. So you get more volume to keep up with this. Okay, so that's that compared to, put that together. Oh, that's hard to do. There we go. So you can see there's quite a big difference there. And then by day 10, we're the size of a golf ball tummy. All right, and that holds about 45 to 60 mils of milk. So again, quite a rapid progression in the size of a baby's tummy and how much milk they're having at any one stage. And that means that we just need to keep up with that as they get bigger, which your milk will naturally do, ideally. Okay. If at any stage you're worried about low supply, please talk to us. The actual instance of low supply, low milk supply, is about 10%. So it's not huge, right? It does happen. But lots of people stop breastfeeding because they feel like they can't keep up, or they're not making enough milk, or whatever. There's usually other factors contributing. One of them is sometimes dummies. If we're giving a dummy too often, then the baby's not feeding when it would want to be, and that can affect milk supply and things like that. So there's often other things going on. So like I said, if you are concerned about your supply, talk to us, see what else we can offer or what else we can do to try and boost that before you give up. Okay. Obviously, if you're at the end of your journey, that's totally fine. You do you, like I said. So skin to skin. We love skin to skin in lots and lots and lots of different scenarios. So immediately after birth, we will pop baby up onto your tummy or your chest just to start this skin to skin process. Okay. It regulates baby's heart rate, breathing, temperature, and it kickstarts that feeding instinct because they can smell the milk, they can smell you, they know that they're nice and safe. We're going to talk a little bit about babies' senses and things down the track as well, and that will kind of make a little bit more sense as well. So having that skin to skin releases oxytocin as well, which obviously, like we've talked about, is quite good, you know, to kickstart your breastfeeding, but also to help contract down your uterus, minimize your bleeding, all of that sort of thing. Decreases adrenaline in the baby. I've kind of jumped all over that little box up the top there, sorry. Babies make eye contact with the mother and starts mapping her face. So, you know, your baby's already getting used to your voice and your smell inside the womb, but they don't know what you look like yet. So they start looking at your face and studying your face, and does this with dads as well. Like I sort of said, that contrast is what they're looking for. So they're looking at eyes, nose, mouth, those contrasting colors to your like skin tone, basically. Okay, and they'll start working out who's who and responding appropriately, and you know, they'll know that they're safer with you guys than with, you know, grandma or the midwife or, you know, whoever is a little bit more unfamiliar. Okay. So yeah, skin to skin is for mum and dads anytime, not just after the birth. And it can be a really good settling technique. If your baby's really unsettled, just do some skin to skin or kangaroo care, which is you know, using one of those slings or a wrap. Just hold your baby close for a while and go and do your other bits and pieces. You do a kangaroo care quite a lot for babies in the special care nurseries, because it's really, really good for bonding and their well-being to be so close to their parents. So a really cool one. I'm sure about that. So feed as baby needs, like I said, on demand, unrestricted access. So we want to keep baby with you all the time for those first few days at least. Obviously, probably longer than that anyway. So feeding when the baby wants to and having unrestricted access, meaning that, you know, the baby can feed whenever they want to, decreases engorgement, which is basically being too full. That can cause mastitis and that sort of thing. Promotes your supply, minimizes weight loss, and promotes growth. And that's the basis of this rooming in idea as well. So keeping baby in the room with you at all times, especially overnight, and you can start recognizing the feeding cues and things like that too. Oh, I had a good video to show you guys. I forgot. Sorry. Just going back to the composition of your breast milk. Don't look at that. You don't want to look at me. Yeah. So like I said about the high milk and the floor milk. Hopefully this works okay.
Hello, I'm Nikki. I'm one of the Caldale Peer supporters, and I'm going to be doing a demonstration to show you what a breastfeed looks like. So the liquid that's in this jug represents breast milk. The water has just been dyed blue so that we can see it a bit better. And you may notice if you were to express your milk that it has a slightly blue tinge to it as well. And the oil represents the fattier portion of the milk. Now, if you were to express your milk and let it settle, it would separate as it has done in this jug, but in the breast it is all mixed up together. And the sponge represents the breast. It has lots of little holes in it, which are similar to the alveoli in the breast. It's important to remember that breasts are not storage vessels. Milk is not stored in them. It is made on demand as baby is suckling. Now, when you first latch your baby to your breast for a feed, they'll start the feed by rapid sucks, and that's to initiate the letdown. And during letdown, baby will be sucking and swallowing quite quickly to keep up with a fast flow of the milk. And you can see in the first glass that it's mainly that blue water. Now, we would call this the thirst quenching part of the milk. It has a high water content and it's packed full of glucose to wake baby up. And as the letdown flows, baby will settle into a more rhythmic suck, swallow, breathe pattern of feeding, which I'll mimic now. And they'll be pausing to let the larger fat molecules in or pass. And you can see in the second glass that there is more fat than the first. They'll be doing 1 to 2 sucks per swallow as well. And the third glass shows the end of a feed. And this is going to get really messy. Now, at the end of a feed, baby may flutter. And it can be really tempting to take baby off at this stage because it can seem like they're not doing much at all. But if you had taken them off, this is what they would have missed out on. This is a really high calorie milk, and it's needed for weight gain and to satisfy their hunger. The fat molecules at the end of a feed are so large that babies flutter to allow their tongue to manipulate those really large fat molecules out. So some babies appear hungry at the end of a feed, and this can lead us to doubt ourselves. But it's perfectly normal for babies to want the second breast. And the reason is because we compare this high calorie milk to something like chocolate. And after having chocolate, we often reach for a glass of water ourselves, and babies are no different. They may want some more of that thirst quenching milk to wash down the chocolate at the end of a feed. And likewise, during hot weather, babies may not want a longer feed. They may want short, frequent feeds for more of this thirst quenching milk. And that's the reason why we don't need to offer exclusively breastfed babies water alongside breastfeeding, because this thirst quenching milk has a high water content already. So don't worry if your baby doesn't get to the flutter stages at every feed. They will adapt to the weather and growth spurts as well. So if you could see a breastfeed, this is what it would look like. And it just shows how important it is to responsibly feed your baby and to watch their feeding cues. Your babies are very clever and they know what they need, and trust your bodies because they are amazing and they will adapt to your baby's needs.
So one.
Okay.
What does she mean by flutter?
So the baby sort of will either stop feeding or will sort of look like they're falling asleep. They might do that little bit of like an eye flutter sort of thing. They can sometimes do a little bit of like a tongue quiver. And it sort of all looks like the baby's going to sleep, right? So that would be when you would, you might have to wake them up a little bit more, offer them the second side. They'll either take it or they won't, and that's okay if they don't. But we would want them to at least have that option, if you know what I mean. So it can just look like the baby's done with the feed, but we should always at least offer that second side. Okay. Alrighty. So let's get through that stuff. Rest when you can, keep baby close, eat well. Breastfeeding can take it out of you. So you often feel quite dehydrated, snackish. So have lots of water and snacks available while you're breastfeeding. You know, your breastfeeds could be 10 minutes long, they could be an hour long, depends on the baby, depends on that individual breastfeed too. So you want to make sure that you're nice and set up for your breastfeed before you sit down and do it as well. Avoid lots of visitors in the first few days. Seek support if you need. Be nice to yourself. That applies all the time, but cluster feeding. Have you heard of cluster feeding before? No, yeah, no. No, that's okay. So, like I sort of mentioned before, as your baby gets a bit bigger, those breastfeeds can space out a little bit, especially overnight. But they often will make up for it somewhere. So we talk about like a witching hour, a little bit of a lie because it's usually a couple of hours at least. And it's usually around sort of late afternoon to evening, usually when you're trying to get tea sorted and work out with other kids and all that sort of thing. So typically in a 24-hour period, babies will have I think it's 6 to 8 breastfeeds. No, 8 to 10, sorry, getting myself mixed up. 8 to 10 breastfeeds in 24 hours. So that works out to be about 2.5 to 3 hourly. But if they have a 5-hour gap overnight, they've got to make up for it somewhere. So that cluster feed is just going to be a couple of short feeds in a small amount of time, or over an hour and a couple of hours, that they have those ongoing, or feels like constant feeds. Okay, so it is just a period of time in the day, just to make up for that longer period overnight sometime. So the baby will do lots of feeds close together, typically in late afternoon. As I said, cluster feeding is really normal. It doesn't mean that you've got low supply. Let baby just go for it. That is fine. Frequent feeding or cluster feeding will lead to an increase in supply. So again, we often see this increase around that 6-week growth spurt as well. So they're trying to feed quite a lot. And also you'll notice this on day 2 or 3, just before your milk comes in too. Your baby will feed quite a lot because they're trying to stimulate that increase in supply. Okay. But the app said you shouldn't be hungry yet. Well, I don't know that. Nappies. Some of these pictures look the colour's a bit off, I think. We might just backstep a sec and talk a little bit about feeding cues. So there's sort of 3 stages, I suppose, of feeding cues. So I've got some cards here with some photos of babies, and I want you guys to line them up on the table in order of what you think is a happy baby to a baby that is desperate for a feed. Okay, so our first stage of feeding cues is in the first week or so is an asleep baby, right? That's just starting to wake up, starting to yawn, turn head side to side. That's called a rooting reflex. They're starting to look for a boob. They're stretching a little bit and just becoming a little bit more animated, right? So in that first week, especially, that's what your babies will do. So they'll basically feed and sleep. So that first stage is just waking up, yawning, all of those sorts of things. In second stage, we're getting to more of an agitated sort of state. Babies sort of start stretching a little bit more movement, more alert. They're starting to look for things to put in their mouth. So that's when they'll start putting hands, blankets towards their mouth. If somebody's holding them, that's when they'll start trying to suck on a shoulder or somebody's neck or something like that, And then if we still haven't fed by that point, they progress up to like the third level or third stage, which is quite an unhappy, crying, screaming, red-faced baby. Okay. By that point, babies will not latch well if they are red-faced and screaming and really, really agitated. So that's a good time to pass them off to somebody else. So partners, that's really, really when you guys come in handy. Or, you know, if you've got your mum around, or your mother-in-law, or, you know, your neighbour, whoever's around, let them try and settle the baby a little bit before you try and latch them. Because if they try and latch while they're screaming and red-faced and upset, that latch is likely to be shallow, which means that they're not going to get an effective feed. They're not going to get that milk in their tummy, which is going to make them more agitated. It's going to cause that trauma or that damage to your nipples, and it'll just be a little bit of a cycle for you, unfortunately. So yeah, best to settle baby before you get to that point, or, you know, if you get to that point before you feed, I mean. So you've got some pretty settled babies there until that last one. So yeah, absolutely. So you've got a really nice settled sleeping baby. That baby obviously doesn't want to feed right now, or maybe it's just fed, you know. Starting to yawn and wake up, a little bit more alert, putting hands to the mouth, the two of those there, and then a screaming baby, and you've got very similar there. So quite a wide-eyed baby there. I love that one. Yeah, what's good? But yeah, absolutely. That putting hands to mouth is a really clear sign that you should be getting yourself sorted. Like I said, if you're at home, like get yourself set up with your snacks and your TV remote and your water, and make sure you go to the toilet first and all of that sort of thing, so that you can settle in and have a nice feed. So I might just divert from this a sec. How do we know if a baby has had enough to eat while you're breastfeeding? You don't know how much volume is going in, I should say. So how do you know if they're feeding well?
They unlatch and then
Yeah.
they start falling asleep and they get tired.
Yep. Anything else? So that's
nappies.
Yeah. So the falling asleep and pulling off the boob, that's, you know, immediate feedback that your baby's finished with that feed. Nappies are a little bit more of a long-term, you know, in a day or a couple of days sort of feedback. What about longer term?
Weight gain.
Yeah. Yep. They look nice and pink and plump and happy. They're settled for longer periods of time. Your feeding's comfortable. It shouldn't be painful. Sometimes that first initial, you know, 10 to 30 seconds or so is a little bit pinchy, can be a little bit uncomfortable, but then it should settle out and it should be painless for the rest of the feed. So if you've got discomfort or pain throughout the feed, there's probably something wrong with the latch. So take baby off, try and relatch, see if you can get it a little bit better than the next time. If baby's had a bit of a dodgy feed at one point, you know, there is probably going to be a little bit of discomfort for the next few feeds after that, because you've got a bit of trauma or a bit of damage there, even if you can't see it. So that's okay, as long as we're making sure then that that latch for those subsequent feeds is on point, right? Yeah, but yeah, beautiful. Have you heard the term milk drunk? Yeah, it's totally a thing, right? You've noticed it? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So they do go quite floppy after a feed if they're really content. Yeah, they're catching flies, you know, they got the mouth open, really just out of it. So nappies then, these are all quite normal nappies. So day 1 to 2 is really quite thick, black, tar, sticky. If it's left on there for more than like 20 minutes, I reckon, it's absolutely horrible to get off. So it usually doesn't smell, which is a benefit. That's a good one. But yeah, it is quite sticky and horrible to look at. There's usually quite a lot of it too. They're big poos. Once your milk changes, as your milk's coming in and it's doing that transition, we get these transition poos. So I don't know about the that sort of looks red to me on day 3 there, but it's typically more of like a brownish black, can be sort of brownish green. So that's that transition from that black to more of a green color. And then that green sort of, it can be a little bit seedy, is a transitional poo. So that's totally fine. And then from sort of day 5, day 6-ish onwards, when your milk is in and it's more established, we're looking at yellowy mustard poos. Okay, and that's quite normal. That's really good. They should be nice and soft, but not liquid or runny or anything like that. Okay. If at any point they're like frothy or bubbly or anything like that, please let us know. That can be a sign that baby's unwell. One other thing that you can notice in the nappies is a bit of a orangey red mark in their wee. So it's not coming out of their bum, it's a wee thing. That is it's urates, it's a concentration of urine. Really, really normal in the first 3 days. Okay, if it's happening beyond that point, please tell us. I mean, you can tell us at any point, obviously. Or if you're unsure what it is, that's okay, because it can look a little bit like a blood spot too. So if you're noticing that, you can let us know for sure. It's normal in those first few days, but once the milk comes in and it's being flushed through their system a little bit quicker, we shouldn't be getting any of those urates in the nappy. Okay, so if it's happening beyond those first few days, it is a sign of dehydration, which can mean that there's obviously issues with the feeding somewhere along the line. Baby's not getting enough milk. Okay. Baby girls can have a bit of a hormonal adjustment, and they can have like what we call a mini period. So that can be either mucousy discharge, or it can be blood stained in the nappy, and that's really normal. Like I said, it's just a hormonal thing because of the pregnancy and that transition to life. Those hormones have to sort of balance themselves out, and like I said, baby girls get that, baby boys don't. All babies can have a bit of swelling in their breast tissue though, so even boys can have sort of like what's looking like a little swollen breasts, and again, that's hormonal. It'll settle down and it's very normal. Okay, not all babies, but sometimes that happens. Okay, any questions so far? We're good, beautiful. So it's a bit of a visual here of your cues. Again, starting to stir, mouth open, turning head side to side, and then we're getting to stretching, hand to mouth, and then crying, turning red. Okay, beautiful. Some quite nice pictures coming up, hopefully. There we go. Might just give one of these a watch, because it is quite cool. So if we leave a baby alone, where did that open? For that first feed, your baby will actually crawl up to the breast, which is really cool for a little baby that can't do very much. Hang on, sorry. This one only goes for 30 seconds, so. Share screen. The perfect breast crawl. How about that? This is all insects. Oh, it's so cool. You can see that baby sort of a little head on, little crawling around looking for that breast, and then sort of just goes for it, doesn't he? Latches on straight away. He, she, I don't know. But that's instinctual And like I said, if we leave our babies alone, they will do that. Or most babies will anyway. So we'll just keep tracking along. So we'll talk a little bit about attachment, but your midwife will go through this sort of stuff with you a little bit more in depth too. So we want to get comfortable, be as close to the baby as possible. So those like unlatched bras and things like that can sometimes get in the way because they can get a bit bunchy under the boob and sort of prevent baby from getting really close. We typically want baby tummy to tummy or chest to chest. So if you're holding a baby in like a cross cradle sort of position, sometimes it feels natural to hold the baby so that they're facing up and then turn them in, right? But you want to actually turn the whole baby's body so that their chest is on your chest, basically. Okay. I can't see this in the thingo. So if you've got that chest to chest, then your baby is in the right position to be able to latch on. Okay. And they're going to be in a good position. If they're this way and they're turning their head trying to get to the boob, you know, if you try and have a drink like that, right? How comfortable do you think that's going to feel? How effective do you think they're going to be sucking and swallowing in that position that they're turned off to the side? Same as if your baby is too far down and really reaching for the breast, they're going to be really extended. And, you know, if you tried to swallow a drink with your head right, you know, looking right up at the ceiling, it's not comfortable. It doesn't work well. Babies are not going to respond. Same as this, if they're too far forward and they're really scrunched up, they're not going to be able to swallow very well either. So they really want to be in a sort of a neutral position, aligned really well. So we talk about nose to nipple. So if your baby's nose is lined up with your nipple when you first get them in position, then when they open their mouth, that mouth is going to line up with the nipple and get it in the right position, okay? Which is basically what that says anyway. So position baby to where your nipple naturally falls and line baby up so that their nipple is close to the top lip or lined up with the nose to the nipple, okay? Bring baby in close and support the shoulders. So try not to have your hand on the back of your baby's head. Can sometimes feel quite natural or normal to go like that, but you want your hand sort of supporting behind the back of the neck and under the shoulders, more like that position. If you're holding your baby like this, they don't have the flexibility to be able to pull themselves off if they need to. So we need to let them have that freedom to be able to pull themselves off or pull back a little bit, you know, for breathing is a good reason, but also just to give us that feedback of when to stop feeding and, you know, all of that sort of thing too. Plus you want to be really careful of those soft spots on the baby's head as well. Shape your breast to fit baby's mouth. So when we talk about that, we talk a little bit about the hamburger hold. So if you imagine eating a hamburger, you're going to eat it horizontally, right? You're not going to turn it sideways unless you're an absolute psychopath and eat it sideways, okay? Because that's the way our mouths are shaped. They're horizontal, so it goes in horizontally. Funny. So when we're applying that to breastfeeding, you want to sort of shape your breast so that it's going in like a hamburger, okay, horizontally into the baby's mouth. And often it really depends on which way your baby is positioned. But if your baby is positioned cross-body like this, it's a C grip or a U grip, sorry. So then it's underneath the nipple, one finger on either side of the areola, and you squeeze together to make it a bit of a, so your fingers are in a U shape to make that sort of horizontal hamburger sort of shape to get into the baby's mouth. Okay.
So just around like the areola.
Yeah. If your fingers are too far down on the nipple, your fingers just get in the way of where baby would want to latch. Okay, so remember we said your baby wants to get as much of that breast tissue and nipple tissue into their mouth as possible. So if your fingers are in the way, that's not going to help. Okay, So it's just shaping it enough so that your baby can latch on well. All right. Some babies, or I suppose it depends on your nipple shape too. If you've got really quite long, sticky, outy nipples, you might not need to do this. You might just need to sort of guide baby in the right direction. So yeah, it all depends on what your baby does and what your anatomy is like and all that sort of thing. So, but yeah, that's a bit of a tip anyway. And then what you want to do is sort of brush your nipple on baby's nose and down on their lip, because that will drag that bottom lip down and open their mouth and kick in that reflex to then open their mouth and latch on. Okay, so if you're going down the lip like that, that will then encourage that bottom lip to drop and get it out the way. So you want lips flanged, and we talk about the Kellogg's K, like the special K logo. You know how those that K sort of flanges out. It's like that with their lips, okay? If they have got their lips tucked under at all, the seal is not good, so they might be bringing in air with the feed. They potentially are not sucking effectively, so they're not getting a good amount of milk. And also they can get blisters on their lips by doing that. Okay, it can also give you blisters on the nipple as well. So you really want the baby to have their lips flanged and out of the way. So on the next page, see that top one there, that baby's lip is dropped right down underneath, and then by doing that, you can kind of curl your baby up and over onto the breast. So if you've got bottom lip tucked on there, you can kind of curl your baby up and they'll grab on a bit like that top baby's doing. Okay, and that will make sure that those lips are in the good position. Okay, so as baby opens her mouth, bring her onto the breast. So you always bring the baby to you. You don't bring yourself to Bubs. Okay, and that's just for your own posture and shoulders and neck. If you're constantly going like this, you're just going to pull muscles and strain yourself there. So you always bring baby to baby's nose is clear, and even if baby's nose is pressed into the breast a little bit, they can still breathe out the side of their nostrils. So babies' noses are sometimes quite flat, and they do breathe out the sides of their nostrils. So even if they're pressed in a bit, that's okay. Like that one on the bottom left there, I imagine that baby's nose is pressed in quite a bit, but that's okay. So you can see there the good effective attachment compared to poor attachment. That baby's got a lot more of the breast in his mouth compared to the poor attachment is right on the end of the nipple. It's not going to be stimulating those milk ducts. Lips neutral, not sucked in or tucked in, and it should feel comfortable once they've latched well and drawn the nipple back to the soft palate. Okay, there's lots of different bits and pieces. Again, you don't need to remember all of this, okay?
Will it feel comfortable from like the first feed, or is it like the first feeds are going to be uncomfortable?
I wouldn't say they should be uncomfortable. I would say it's common for it to feel a little bit strange, or for there to be a little bit of an adjustment period, a bit of like, because you haven't done it before, your nipple's never gone through that experience or anything like that. There is sort of like a toughening up period, I suppose, where the skin does become a little bit sort of more used to it, not so sensitive, I would say. Okay. But no, long story short, I wouldn't expect it to be uncomfortable. As long as your baby's latched properly. Like I said, it can be a little bit pinchy initially, but that should settle within 30 seconds. Okay. And after that, it should be comfortable. Okay. Beautiful. So some common breastfeeding positions. So we've got 2 different crossbody positions. One is, actually those both are quite similar, but they've got sort of, I think this is called cross cradle position. So that's usually how you would hold a baby, right? Everybody sort of gravitates to that. You know, the side that baby's head's on is there tucked into the crook of the elbow. And that's can be totally fine to breastfeed like that. That's sort of our instinct, is to hold a baby like that. This one I find limits baby's range of motion and limits their capacity to pull away and to readjust themselves. Putting your other hand along your baby's back and supporting in that position that I showed you before. This baby's losing his nappy. So holding your baby and supporting the neck, arms under the shoulders. You want that arm tucked right under as well, so they're giving you a little bit of a cuddle, because otherwise it gets in the way, it gets folded in and it's just in the way. It's not getting that chest to chest, and then they're trying to really reach to actually reach the nipple. Okay, so putting your arm or your hand along your baby's back and holding them like this can sometimes be a little bit more, a little bit easier for you, and then you've got that hand to sort of manipulate your boob, and baby's got that freedom to move their head as well. Okay, but a lot of people find this really comfortable too. Whatever works for you. Like I said, there is also the underarm or football hold. So same sort of positioning with your hand. You want your fingers sort of underneath baby's arms, fingers on the back of the head, and then still chest to chest, but it's obviously the side of your chest, and wrap your baby around. And then the other one there is side lying. So in bed, you would have your baby on the bed next to you, or you can hold your baby and support them in bed, and then you would be sort of allowing your boob to just sort of drop into their mouth a little bit. Okay, so they're the most common breastfeeding positions. Some people prefer one over the other, some people mix and match. It really depends, and it might depend on where you are too. Like if you're sitting up in bed, you might find that you know, crossbody is easier, and then when you're in a chair, you might find the underarm is easier. You know, so give them all a go. See what you feel most comfortable with. You might be surprised. Okay, what are we up to? I'll just quickly run through this one. So as your milk comes in, you might become engorged. So like I said, that can feel quite full and heavy, can be a little bit sore. You want unrestricted access to the breast and to feed often, like we've already talked about. Engorgement can make it tricky to attach baby initially. So if your boobs are really full and hard, that can make it hard for baby to latch on. So you might want to express a little bit if your boobs are feeling like this before you latch baby on. So hand expressing before a feed, or reverse pressure, which is these diagrams down here, will help to do that. Help to relieve pressure, sorry. Cool packs if needed to soothe and avoid blocked ducts, which could lead to mastitis. So do you guys know what the signs of mastitis are? What to look out for? No. So any, hey?
Really, really big nipples.
Really big nipples, yeah. Any lumps that you can feel in your breast, any redness or tenderness at all. They are all the signs of a blocked duct. And then mastitis is that blocked duct becoming infected. So you would often have systemic symptoms, which is like flu symptoms. It hits you quite hard out of nowhere, usually mastitis. So you often wake up feeling really fluish, and that in conjunction with a lump or redness or soreness is pretty clear that it's mastitis. Blocked ducts can be resolved quite easily with continuing to feed, alternating hot and cold packs, cabbage leaves in the bra. That's still a really good suggestion, even though it's a bit old-fashioned. all of that sort of thing, just massage in the shower, all of that sort of thing, just to try and push that block through. And like I said, you want to keep feeding on that side too, because baby will often pass that block through as well, so they can have that in their feed. That's no issues at all. When you get to mastitis stage, you can continue to do all of those things, but often antibiotics are the solution.
So you should go to the doctor if you think it is.
Yeah. Again, mastitis is one of those things that can progress really quickly. So it can come on really quickly, and then it can progress onto like breast abscesses and things like that really quickly too. One of our midwives actually had quite a horrible abscess with her second, so it happens. So a little bit of a diagram on hand expression. I would suggest speak to your midwife later down the track. We can give you a pack and show you how to do this from 37 weeks so that you can start collecting colostrum to give to baby or to use in baths or whatever. Just use it as a backup storage. So nipple care and breast care. Number one tip is to make sure that baby is well positioned and attached properly to the breast. Nothing's going to fix itself unless the baby is attached properly. Let the baby finish a feed, so that helps to avoid any blocked ducts or mastitis. So we want that breast to drain, like I said. We can hand express a little bit of breast milk after the feed and let it air dry on the nipple to relieve any soreness or cracks or anything like that. You can use nipple cream. There are some that you must wipe off before a feed or wash off before a feed, but others are quite safe to put on and feed without washing it off. So your Marcolan and your lanolin are natural and they're okay to leave on before a feed. Wire-free bras, and you want to be really careful of the bras that still have the straps and things, so those fold down ones and things like that, because those straps can actually, even if they're not super tight, they can still restrict your milk flow and cause blocked ducts. Okay, so you want to be really careful with those. Loose but supportive and easily accessible clothing, so you don't want to be wearing like sports bras or crop tops or anything like that. And if you have any signs of blocked ducts or mastitis, contact your midwife, your GP, or the ABA, which is that Australian Breastfeeding Association. Okay. So a couple of extra bits and pieces here. Cup or finger feeding is less likely to cause nipple confusion than a bottle. So you can see up the top there, that's cup feeding just out of that little medicine cup. Finger feeding with the syringe in the bottom right photo. And these are if you are having issues with your latch or attachment or any concerns with actual breastfeeding. More finger feeding down in that bottom left corner as well. Nipple shields may be useful. I would recommend speaking to one of the midwives before you start using a nipple shield. You can buy them in the chemist and start using them yourself, but like I said, we might be able to work out a different solution or suggest something different as well. And obviously there's breast pumps in certain situations if that's appropriate for you. Okay. Oh, I can't stand all these stupid transitions. They look nice, but no. This is one of our midwives actually, so little thing there for you guys to read.
What are the acronyms?
So EBM is express breast milk. IBCLC is internationally board certified lactation consultant. So it's just the acronym for lactation consultant. I think that's all of them, isn't it? Cool. So partners are really important in giving support, making sure that mum has everything that she needs to be settled and prepped and ready for breastfeeding, and then also helping with things like this, you know, the complications and pumping and storing milk and all of that jazz. I love this one. So ways that dads can bond with the baby while mums are breastfeeding. So obviously if you're exclusively breastfeeding, there's not a lot of time that dads get one-on-one with baby because of that. Whereas if you're bottle feeding, then obviously dads can be more involved with that and more hands-on. So baby wearing, or that kangaroo care that I was talking about before, play, you know, interaction, bless you, co-bathing or co-showering, you know, showering with your baby can be really good. That's also, you know, getting that skin to skin benefit with that as well, and then skin to skin. Often I find that dads like doing tummy time with their babies because they naturally just pop babies on their chest when they're sitting back watching the telly. So having your baby on their chest, on your chest, so that they can look up and, you know, put their head up and things like that, is really, really good for them. And that is a form of tummy time. So they love that. So yeah, dads can do that, absolutely. Infant massage is a really nice settling technique, can be really good for upset tummies and wind and things like that. So tummy massage and that sort of thing. And reading books and stories and talking to them, telling your baby about your day. They love to hear about it. Okay. Again, they want to know who's familiar and who's safe. So the more time you spend with your baby, the more they're going to know this is a safe space. You're a safe person. You're familiar. You know, and that's going to help with settling and all that sort of thing. Okay. So supports. We've got the midwife up to 6 weeks after birth, local GP for forever, and the ABA. So that they do have a 24-hour hotline that you can call and speak to a breastfeeding counsellor. So all of their counsellors are volunteers, but they are mums that have breastfed for 6 months at least, and then they have done training course to be able to help you guys with your issues as well. So it's a really good resource. Keep in mind that it is volunteer based, so try and keep it to quite essential questions, I suppose. I wouldn't be ringing at 3 o'clock in the morning to ask, you know, basic stuff, I suppose, or something that can wait until the morning. They do have a live chat. They've got an app. They've got local support groups. So we do have a group that meets every month, I think it is, and they do have a Facebook group that you can join on to. And local breastfeeding counsellors. So we've got 2 lactation consultants, which I think we talked about last week, which is a really good resource for us here in Christabrook. So really, really cool. So again, lactation consultants. So they can help with more complex stuff, but they can also just help with things like nipple shields, or just making sure that you've got the right attachment, or, you know, if you do have concerns about your supply or baby's weight gain or that sort of thing, they can sort of nut all of that out with you as well. And then we've got the Child and Family Health Service, which is CAFS, that we talked about last week as well. So like I said last week, they're with you right up until your baby goes to school at 5 years old. So I'm assuming you won't be breastfeeding by that point. So that's the whole breastfeeding journey covered with CAFS. Okay. So lots of support out there. Oops. So here's some take-home messages on breastfeeding. So your supply equals your removal of milk. So the more you feed or the more milk you remove, the more you make, which should be lining up with how much your baby needs, obviously. You are more than enough for your baby. Trust your body and your baby. Have your goals and your support people aware of your goals. So like I said, if your goal is to make it to 2 weeks of breastfeeding, go for it. Sounds good to me. Self-care, be gentle on yourself. That seems to be a pretty underlying message on all of our things here. And take things one feed at a time, one day at a time, especially if you're feeling like things aren't going as well as you would like them to be. So that's it for our breastfeeding stuff. In your sorry, I'm just flicking through these. In your orange book, there should be a A4 page with some blue text and stuff on there. There's a table on the back of that that shows you how to store your breast milk. So if you are pumping or expressing, it shows you exactly how long you can store that for in different fridges and freezers and whatnot. So I think in the fridge it's 3 days, in the freezer it's in your fridge freezer it's 3 months, and then in a deep chest freezer it's 6 months to a year, I think it is. So have a look at that table if you've still got it in your orange folder. What else? Sterilization and bottle prep and things like that. We can go through with your midwife if you want to know about that side of things, just because we're a bit time based here. So, alrighty. If you guys want to have a little stretch and go to the toilet and just have a 5-minute break, that's cool, and then we'll go into the newborn stuff.
Really quick in the veal call.
Sorry, Gemma. Getting the next bit sorted. Yeah, that's right. Certainly not. Yeah, HelloFresh. That one, and I want. Oh, where is it? Bring those. They're fresh. They came from the Perry markets this morning.
Yes, I.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't bake them. That's for sure.
Were you at the market? Is that how you got them?
Yeah. It was a bit wet, but it wasn't too bad.
What's the Perry market like?
Oh, it wasn't as good a turnout as they thought it was going to be, because they had 80 stalls booked or something. But yeah, because of the weather, a whole heap of people didn't turn up.
80, yes.
Oh.
They do it monthly?
Yeah, they do. Yep. But being this one is the Christmas, like it's meant to be the Christmas one, they had a lot more than usual. And then I don't think they go back until February now.
Oh,
So
unfortunate timing.
yeah. Sorry, I've got my little like run sheet on my phone. That's why I keep looking at this. Okay, we're just going to talk about crying babies. So I've just got on here. some health benefits for breastfeeding, of which there are many. Lots for mum, lots for baby, probably some for mum that you didn't know about. So we usually only talk about baby benefits, I would say. There you go. Now, if we go back to, no, sorry, it's the next slide. Here we go. Okay, and that's not showing up on there because I haven't shared my screen, have I? All right, why do babies cry? Tell me. Hungry. Dirty nappy. Want to cuddle? Yeah, because they can. Yep. Yeah, that's right. That's the only way they communicate. Absolutely. What else? Tired? Yep. Just waking up. Just every second of every day, you reckon? Yep. Feeling sick? Yep. Yep. Anything else? Cool. We got the main ones anyway. So that little checklist that I talked about before of why your baby might be crying or might be upset, and that probably is a little bit small for you guys at the back. But the main ones really are hungry, nappy, uncomfortable in some way, or too hot or too cold, wind, and then we're looking at like illness and overtired and overstimulated, that sort of thing. So if our baby is hungry, what do? We feed them. So feed baby, trust instincts, even if it's your baby's only just fed. Like we talked about, we do on-demand feeding. Dirty nappy, change, look for any rashes, always check out what's going on down there, make sure that everything's okay. Uncomfortable, too hot or too cold. Babies lose a lot of their heat from the top of their head. So really important, especially in the cold weather, that we're putting beanies on, but not to sleep, okay? Check the clothes and make sure that they're appropriate for the weather. That sort of rule of thumb of one extra layer than what you're comfortable in. So if you're happy in t-shirt and shorts, maybe put them in, a singlet and a short sleeve onesie or something like that, or a onesie and a light wrap sort of thing. Or for cold weather, you want them in a bit more thicker things, so less of like your muslin and more of your cotton or your thicker materials, okay? Wind, burping. So breastfed babies often don't need to be burped. And again, take this, with a grain of salt, I suppose, and base it on what your baby needs and what your baby responds to. If your baby is quite windy, then burp them, totally fine. But breastfeeding babies, if they are latched well to the breast, won't take in that much air. I keep wanting to say water, sorry. So burping isn't always necessary. But you want them upright. This is over the shoulder. I would actually recommend that you burp your baby in front of you, upright in front of you like this. So then you can see, if they do have a bit of a spill or a vomit. Well, yeah, that too. You don't get it down your back, but also you can see what's going on as well. Illness, trust your instincts. You can possibly check their temperature and take them to the GP if you're concerned. Comfort, totally. Cuddle them. Absolutely. Overstimulated or tired. This is really common when you've got lots of visitors around, those big days. Remove stimulation, sing to them, rock them, all those settling techniques. The conditions are not right. So weather, go back to that hot or cold, too loud or passed around too much, that interrupts their normal sleep cycles. And then you can be a bit of a reason that they're crying. So not in a bad way, but if you are stressed or anxious, babies are really responsive to that and they'll pick up on that. That's totally fine to put them down in a safe spot. So put them in the bassinet for 5 or 10 minutes, go and make yourself a cuppa, or just go and have some deep breaths for a minute, especially if your baby's been crying for a while. We talked about that crying it out or letting them self-soothe, but there's a difference between setting your baby down in a safe place for 5 minutes just to have a reset versus self-soothing. Okay, so make sure that you're coming back in an appropriate amount of time and meeting your baby's needs. Okay, how often, or sorry, if you were to put together the amount of time that a baby would cry in 24 hours, how long do you think that would be? How much time do you think that would take up on average? 23 and a half hours out of 24?
What age?
Newborn. So, yeah.
12? No.
12?
No, let's say six hours? 4 to 6?
4 to 6?
Yeah, I'm wrong with 4 to 6.
Everyone's different.
Everyone is different. Yeah. Every baby is different. What were you going to say? 2 or 3? You guys are pretty close, actually. 2.5 to 5 hours a day on average. So every baby is different. Obviously, if you've got a colicky baby, it's going to be totally different to a baby that wants to sleep 8 hours overnight. Yeah. But on average, really normal for 2.5 to 5 hours if you were going to put it all together. But it's not all together. It's broken up into 10 minutes here, half an hour there, an hour, you know, that witching hour that baby's really unsettled for, you know, an hour or two. So it can feel like a lot through the day, but keep in mind it's not actually a huge chunk of your day that your baby is crying for. So as long as you're responding relatively quickly and going through this bit of a checklist, you're doing everything right. And baby just might want to cry for a little while, and that's okay. So like I said, that's week 6 weeks old, tends to be when babies want to cry because they're fussy, they're growing, they're unsettled, they want to feed a lot. Beautiful. Cool. Any questions on that? On anything that we've talked about so far? No. Cool. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. Oh gosh, I backtracked too far. That's a cute bubba. It's also a cute little stretchy baby. Yeah, he's a little wrinkly fella. He's not very big, a bit scrawny. Okay, newborn senses. So you might be shocked to find out that babies have got all the same senses as us. 5 senses. Wow. Amazing. However, they are a little bit different. So we talked a little bit about a couple of differences already, but which one do you think is the best sense for a newborn baby? Which one's the most developed, do you think?
I was going to smell.
Smell or hearing? Yep, it is hearing. Hearing is the best developed sense, so they can hear quite a bit compared to what they can see and smell and taste, which does make sense if you think about it. Probably the main stimuli for them in utero is their sense of hearing, so what they can hear with your voice, you know, your heartbeat, your lungs, all of that sort of thing, any music that you play, your partner's voice, your co-workers' voices, me jabbering on for hours on end. There's a lot of noise going on, okay? So when you think about that environment that they're coming out of, and then as a newborn, we want to keep everything really quiet for them, don't we? We want to go and put them in a nice quiet room and expect them to be quiet. You're already shaking your head like, no, which is totally fine, because I would agree. I would say, no, don't do that. Babies, like I said, they want to know that they're safe. They want to know that they're in a safe environment. So that includes quite a bit of noise for them. So all of those things like that I've just mentioned, your heartbeat, your lungs, your bowel sounds, you know, all of that is going on 24/7 for them. So if we put them in a completely silent room and expect them to settle and sleep, we're dreaming. Okay. They need that little bit of white noise in the background. So go and do your vacuuming, go and have your visitors around, have the TV on, you know, the dog's barking, that's fine, you know, all of that sort of thing. I might actually shut some of those doors. I'm starting to get a bit cold. Don't know about you guys, but I'll just flick on the hearing one so that you can. Perfect. Thank you. Start reading on that one.
So close.
I didn't want to swear, but
Oh, thank you. So hearing is very well developed. Babies recognize voices, they respond to music. You might find already that if you play music, certain different types of music in utero, that can be a trigger for babies to start kicking around and moving. That's very common. Continual exposure makes them familiar with things. So continual exposure to the same type of music or the same voices. Like I said, tell your baby about your day, you know, narrate things that you're doing, and they'll start to get to know your voice. And noise can help settle. Okay. So the sense of sight. Newborns can see 15 to 25 centimeters. Why do you think that is? Yeah, if you're holding your baby, that's how far it is to see you, basically. They've got quite weak eye muscles, so they don't focus, right? They can look like they're going a bit cross-eyed, they can look like they're going all over the place, or very like off with the fairies sort of thing, just looking at random things. But it's because they don't have the strength in their eye muscles to focus their eyes or their sight on one thing. And that takes a few weeks at least to sort of work its way up. That face mapping that we talked about before, so they're checking out your face, they really want to focus on what you're looking like. Okay, so you'll notice that they stare quite intently at you, which is very cute. They do respond well to dark and light contrast, which is interesting because lots of the toys that we buy for babies are quite brightly coloured, but anything black and white or dark and light contrast, they will gravitate towards more. So you see those black and white picture books that are really common and really trendy at the moment. So they're really good for your baby's development. They want to mimic your expressions. So you'll notice if you hold a baby, you automatically do like big facial expressions, big eyes, big smile, over-exaggerated facial expressions. And that's because they're trying to mimic that. So it's an instinct thing. And also it's just really fun watching a baby trying to copy your face. So so we kind of naturally go for that. But that's really good for them to start to work on those facial muscles and that emotional response as well. So that's connecting in their brain that's an emotional thing. And following moving shapes. So a few weeks down the track, they'll start tracking you in the room. They'll start following, if you put a toy in front of them, they'll start sort of following that with their eyes to an extent as well. So their sense of smell is quite heightened. So again, good guess on that one. Amniotic fluid, so the fluid that they're bobbing around in at the moment, does have a smell. It's made up of mum's DNA. Okay, so it's different for every single mum. The amniotic fluid does smell a bit sweet to baby, and then that's how Bubs knows who mum is, by scent. Okay. Skin to skin post birth is really important for that, and we'll continue that reassurance, I suppose, and reaffirming that that's still mum and that's still a safe space and all the rest of it. And then that's why that skin to skin with dads is important as well, to start getting them used to your smell. So things like lots of perfumes and scented things, even your fabric softener and stuff like that. You don't want anything that's too strong in your face because that will confuse this process. Okay. So minimal handling by staff. I mean, the amount of time that you're here, it's not going to make too much difference, but that is one of the reasons why we don't take babies out of the room and like hold them and cuddle them and settle them down and things like that. So we keep Bubs with you for all of those reasons that we've talked about today. And we don't want to confuse baby with unfamiliar scents. What do you think a baby can taste or is tasting? Mm-hmm. Yep. What about at the moment in utero? Hey, anything you eat? Not quite. Doesn't quite work like that. But yeah, the amniotic fluid, yep. Which is quite sweet tasting as well. So exposed to amniotic fluid in the womb, which is swallowed and passed through as urine. And it is quite sweet, so they do have more developed sweet taste buds, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. It doesn't mean that your baby's going to be, you know, a stickler for chocolate and lollies and all the rest of it. It just means that that's the most developed part of their tongue. And I guess that is sort of goes back to like evolutionary measures as well, that babies and kids are adverse to anything that's bitter because poison is bitter. So anything that's poisonous or bad for you, you know, back when we were hunters and gatherers, a plant that tastes bitter often isn't good for you or is poisonous. So pretty cool. Little history 101 there. And our sense of touch. So the sensory cortex, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for this sense, is the most developed area of the brain at birth. So that's the part of the brain that's processing all of these inputs from your, you know, hearing, sight, smell, touch. Touch is communication for a baby. So just as in utero, their communication is movements and kicking. When they are born and earthside, that touch, those cuddles, skin to skin, baby massage, all of that sort of thing is communication for them, and that's reassurance that they're okay, that they're safe, etc. They're not aware of their limbs, so they will not work out that they have limbs until they're about 3 months old, and that's when they'll start grabbing for things and working out their hands majority. But other than that, they're just sort of these things that come into vision every now and then. Yeah, that's right. They'll startle themselves with their own fingers. So the reflexes are developed, and that is one thing that we check at birth. We do a head-to-toe assessment of a baby, and we check their reflexes at birth. So skin to skin, like I said, infant massage, cuddles, and wrapping. They like to be nice and wrapped up. Babies are a little bit 50-50 on whether they like their arms and hands in or not. Some babies will wriggle them out no matter what. Other babies will be perfectly happy being jacket. So again, go with whatever your baby wants. Beautiful. We're good on that. Beautiful. Yeah, cool. We'll do that in a little bit. How are we going for time? 3 o'clock. I think we started a little bit late. So we'll just pop out of that for a sec. Hopefully I've got the website. I think we looked at the red nose stuff last week, didn't we? Yeah. So I've got those couple of laminated sheets on the table there that are straight off the Red Nose website with safe wrapping, tummy time, making up a cot, all of that sort of thing. But also we want to just chat slightly about that's the wrong one. The the same one over twice.
You just push up the side and it looks like it was him.
Yeah, that's right. So the main safe sleeping guidelines are obviously, like I said, all of it's on the Red Nose website. But basically you want baby right down the end of the cot or the bassinet, so their feet are touching the bottom. Okay. Wrap them in cold weather. Don't wrap them if they don't want to be wrapped. That is totally fine. Once they start rolling, we don't wrap them anymore. You can put them in the sleep sacks and things like that. But obviously we're talking about newborns. So for newborns, we wrap them when they are sleeping. As I said before, we don't put a hat or a beanie on a baby that is that done? What's going on here? Sorry, I've got the wrong PowerPoints mixed up. We don't put a hat or a beanie on a baby sleeping. What else? Like we've talked about already, the baby should be in the room with you guys as well, so that if there is anything amiss, you can respond to that really quickly. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the right PowerPoint. I've lost it now.
That's training, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go worked it out. Don't panic, guys. I might actually just show you guys a quick video first. Okay. do you think of that? A good one. Can't tell you how many times I've watched that, and the music is so catchy.
It's very fancy.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just flick back to the PowerPoint quickly, and we'll just have a little chat about the SID stuff and safe sleeping again, which I know that we touched on last week. But for those you guys haven't watched the recording, give you a little rundown. So, who is at risk of SIDS? So SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome. There's often unknown cause for this for babies that die of SIDS, but there are risk factors. So unsafe sleeping, smoking in the house are probably the main causes, I would say, but there's definitely risk factors here. So babies who sleep on their stomach or their sides, we should always sleep our babies on their backs. Obviously, once they start rolling, then that's fine because they can roll themselves back. If they overheat while they're sleeping, so if they're wrapped up too much, they're sleeping in unsafe environments. So we talk a lot about co-sleeping, which is sleeping with the baby in the bed with you, which is different to a co-sleeper, right? There's a co-sleeper, which is a device. It's a piece of equipment that is a bassinet that attaches to the side of your bed, right? So there's no rail in between their bassinet and your bed, okay? That gives them their own environment and their own space, and that is totally safe. We're happy with co-sleepers. They're fantastic. They're really handy. Go for it. But co-sleeping with the baby in the bed with you can be really, really risky for a lot of reasons. So if you're a really heavy sleeper, or if you are really overtired and you're in a deep sleep, there's a chance that you can roll onto your baby and either crush or suffocate. There's a chance that baby can wriggle underneath the quilt or the blankets and suffocate that way. There's a chance that baby can fall out of the bed if they're, on either side of the bed, sort of thing. So there's lots of different reasons why we would recommend not co-sleeping. However, realistically, lots of parents do it at one point or another, and there are safe ways to do it. So we always recommend that you pop the baby on top of the quilt so that they're not under the blankets. We want baby on one side, usually mum's side. So then it's, dad, mum, baby, or unfortunately, kick dads out of the bed so that there's enough space. Yeah. Well, this is applicable mainly for breastfeeding, obviously. If you're bottle feeding, go for it. You guys, if you dads want to sort it out, go for it. Give mum a rest. But yeah, so keeping them on the top of the quilt, letting them have their own area of space. Get rid of the pillow so the pillow can't fall on top of them or anything like that. Still wrap them up in their own blanket and no hat still. And make sure that it's a smoke-free environment in all cases, but yeah, especially with the bed sheets and things like that. So babies that are exposed to smoking antenatally, so for you guys, if you are smoking at the moment or if you are around people that are smoking, that does increase babies' risk of SIDS. Again, there's safer ways to do that. Babies that are exposed to passive smoke within the household, so again, safe smoking practices, smoking outside, wearing an extra layer that you can take off when you come inside, washing your hands before you touch the baby, all of that sort of thing. And this is applicable for your visitors too. If you have got visitors coming that are heavy smokers, be mindful of these things, and just the smell of the smoke can be quite overwhelming and quite a lot for little babies. Babies that are born premature or low birth weight are at risk. Have a sibling that died of SIDS makes them more at risk. Born to mothers who had little, late or no prenatal care. So you're crossing that one off the risk for you guys. So like I said, you've listened to me jabber on for hours and hours. Born to mothers who are younger than 20 years old at the time of their first pregnancy. So there are some risk factors there. Mothers who smoke during pregnancy are 3 times more likely to have a baby with SIDS. That's huge. Passive smoking from people in the household doubles a baby's risk of SIDS. So we've really, really got to be mindful of those safe sleeping and safe smoking practices. Okay. Beautiful. So safe sleeping, main guidelines there. Sleep baby on their back. Keep the head and face uncovered. Safe sleeping environment, night and day. I do say that if your baby likes being on their tummy, lay them on their tummy to sleep during the day if you can watch them for that entire period of time. If you get up to leave the room, you need to swap your baby onto their back. Okay, you need to be watching them the whole time. Keep baby smoke free, breastfeed baby and sleep baby in a safe cot or bassinet in parents' room. So I'm just going to flick through these because, like I said, it's all on the Red Nose website. I've got those ones there that you can have a look at. But I would recommend that you check out the website to get some more information on all of this stuff. So co-sleeping, again, this is all on the Red Nose website. So it does show you how to safely co-sleep in bed. And the other thing to be mindful of as well is being on the couch. If you're feeding on the couch, if you're really overtired and you've got baby with you on the couch, just be mindful that babies have died in the cracks of couches as well. If they've fallen, behind the couch cushions or something like that, because parents have fallen asleep or something like that, that is a risk as well. So be really mindful of that. Try and get yourself upright and sitting in a more upright chair or something like that if you're awake and really tired. Right, wrapping. So we have a little practice of wrapping and dressing a baby. Let's do it. Okay, I might do a little demo first, and particularly so that people watching the recordings can see. So if I do that, look at that. So you guys might not have got the memo because you weren't here last week. Did you happen to bring anything with you, or do you want to borrow some stuff? Amy, you guys? Yeah. No problem. Good with that one, really. Oh, you have that one. Okay. So just quickly take that one off. Take this off. So we'll do nappies, we'll do a onesie, we'll do a wrap. Oh gosh. I do it a lot more delicate with an actual paper, don't I? Dolls are just kind of fling around a bit, but so your nappies, this may be a little bit self-explanatory, but it does say back on the back of them. Okay, that's usually the side with the tabs on it too. So the tabs are usually on the back part, and that's the bit that you want to put down first. Okay, and then you put your baby into that. So you want their bum, so it comes folded like that. You want their bum as far into that middle crease as possible. Okay, so pop your baby. If you guys want to come closer, you can. By the way. Pop your baby in there and then fold it up. And this baby's not going to cooperate very well because it's a doll. So, but typically that front tab sort of thing, or that front piece of fabric there, will sit across their belly button height, I suppose. So when you've got a like belly button stump, I suppose, like the cord that's been cut, and you've still got a clamp. I'll show you what the clamp looks like. It's a little plastic, yellow plastic thing. So that is on their cord, and that will dry off and fall off within a week or so, right? So you've got that to contend with as well. So what I do personally is I would put the nappy over the top of that, and then once it's all done up with the tabs and everything, I'd fold it down and put your cord and your clamp on top of the nappy. Everybody does a little bit differently, but that is what I recommend, so that it's not sitting in there getting gunky, getting moist, and it just decreases the risk of infection. So those cords can get infected. They don't very often, but they can. So we fold it up to belly button line, and then we are pulling those tabs across, and they should pretty well meet in the middle. Okay. So we've got it nice and tight in the middle there. There we go. So we've got tabs in the middle, nice and tight. And then there's a little trick here. These nappies have got elastic and a little bit of fabric that is supposed to sit on the outside of the elastic. Okay, so if that made any sense to you at all, I'm impressed. But there is a little bit, you just sort of run your finger along here, and you want that elastic to sit flush to the skin. Okay, so the fabric should be on the outside. And that will mean that there's a nice good seal around the leg, so that if there's any big explosions, it's as contained as it can be. Do you have one? Oh,
No,
I didn't give you one, did I? Do. I've got them. Here we go.
thank you.
Knock that one was clean. So that's on both sides of those. All right. That's new. Maybe it's a little function you didn't know about. The other little trick here is the yellow line in the middle. Do you guys know what that does or what it is, or it just looks pretty? It is an indicator. It's a moisture indicator. So that line will turn from yellow to blue when it's wet. So you think blue water, yeah. So that's a nice little indicator there, without having to like open the nappy or change the nappy, not knowing. That will tell you if your baby's done a wee. Okay, it won't necessarily tell you if they're dirty, but that one you can always do the old, back of the leg, have a little peek trick. Okay, yeah, sniff and pass it on. So that's a nappy. When we're doing onesies, I've only got a short sleeve one here. But we want to scrunch it right up to the neck hole and then pop it over the back of baby's head and over the face. Okay, and then we bring it down from there. So the front or the back first, doesn't really matter. Okay, and obviously this baby is not going to be very malleable, but arms would then go in. And they're really cool. They'll like grab your finger. So if you hold your baby's hand, they'll hold on and you can kind of guide that through the armhole. Okay, if that makes sense. So yes. So while you're trying not to get any thumbs or pinkies or anything stuck in the fabric, you can grab their fingers and they'll grab onto you. So that's a little tip there, expert tip. If your onesie's got legs, I recommend doing the legs first, but that's just my personal preference. Everybody's got their own preference. You work out what you like doing best, your own way. If it's got a zipper, so the zipper will usually go down one leg, I would do the leg without the zipper, so the opposite side first. Okay, because if you do the zipper side, it's horrible trying to get the other leg in. Okay. So that's that. Really, yeah, quite easy. But my main thing would be to scrunch it right up to the neck hole to start with, and then grab the fingers and the hands to get those arms through. And then you wrap. So these are our baby blankets, our hospital blankets. They're a rectangle shape. Yes. There's a few different ways that you can do this. I like to just put it down as is. You can fold it down to give them a little bit of extra like cushioning around the top, but I don't think that's totally necessary. We'll just leave it as is, like I said. Center baby in the middle of your rectangle, and your blanket or your swaddle should be just above their shoulders. Okay, and then you want to hold one of their arms across their chest. Bring that first corner over. Do the same on the other side. Hold that second arm in, tuck the other arm in, bring that one across, and then you've got like a little mermaid tail at the back here, a little fish tail, that you can just flick straight up across like that, and then those sides can go under. Okay, you get a little burrito baby. All right. Now there is another way that you can do it with a triangular sort of shape. So you turn your square as a triangle, you flick that bit down, and you basically do exactly the same thing, but with the tail end. So you would do like one side like that. You can do the bottom first and sort of tuck that around and then do that way like that. I find that that one's not quite as secure personally, but you get the same sort of result. So that's sort of that triangle method as well. So who wants to have the first go? Because I think I've only got one baby. And then while you're doing that, I've got a little activity for you to do.
I'd like to see this again.
That's fair. That's okay. And at least like you've got it on recording, so you can go back and watch it. Honestly, if we just dumped a baby on you right now, you would work it out. It's not rocket science. But yeah, there are some tips to make it easier. So for you guys, well, I mean, if you just want to watch, that's totally fine. But yeah, do that. That's all good then. But I need some like background music.
Look at this, expertly done.
This point, when you get some nappies to do that, you just pull the circle off. Oh,
I've done that.
I've done it plenty of times.
Yeah. Good one. Beautiful. So then once you've got it, once you why have I got an extra nappy? Oh, that might have been the one that came off the baby in the first place. Once you've got that, oh gosh, sort of like that on your baby, and then when you're talking about that umbilical cord as well, I would literally just fold it down and it will stay like that underneath the cord clamp as well. Okay. So.
What do you do?
I'm actually doing it initially.
A what?
Yes, I'm doing
Oh, very good.
I'm working on it. I've been working on it. Yeah, already. I've got another 100 eggs.
Oh my God.
Left down what they call the block, just down the side of the rail, and on.
Yeah.
That's when you push you get this tomorrow.
Sure. I think there's the bracelet can stop tomorrow, isn't it?
I think there's still a little bit, but not nearly as much as what it has been.
When I checked, it was like Wednesday last week.
Still super accurate. So if you guys want to have a look at this worksheet with the circles on it, you've got a pack of buttons. Each one of those buttons represents, I think you've got 24 in there, so there should be one for each hour of the day. So if you have a look at your before baby sheet and then after baby sheet and see how it's different and how you allocate your time.
That was the bit I missed. The first arm, I was like, what did I do with
First
that
arm,
first arm?
and then tuck it underneath the other side armpit.
Okay.
Tuck over underneath the armpit.
Beautiful. Very nice.
All right.
Done.
Give it a-
And so for you guys, if you want to have a look at the worksheet with the circles on it, for those playing along at home, I'll pull up that worksheet. Where's my mouse gone? There it is.
Thank you. All right, first time using a nappy.
Just like put them on there, or the 24 hours.
Yeah, so there's one for every hour of the day. You do the before one first. And then the after baby.
Can you make it too tight? Like, is there a no?
Yes, yeah, you do go to please right, you can that's it.
Yeah,
You get throw up on those.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, no, you can't do the nappy too tight. With the wrapping though, I would say don't do the feet bit, that last bit that you flip up. Don't do that too tight because you still want your baby to be able to kick their legs and things like that. And still have movement in their legs and their hips. Otherwise, it can have negative impact on their hips later down the track if you wrap them too tight.
No, it's not get harder for you. You're fine.
Okay, so anybody watching at home or watching the watching the recording, just pulling up an extra activity for you, just to have a little think about how you allocate your time during the day. So if you've got 24 hours in a day, how much time are you spending in each of these circles before you have your baby? So partner and social, sleep, work or housework, chores, and then hobbies. So have a little think about that, and then you might want to pause it on this, and I will flip to the next sheet so you can see. So pause now and do that one, and then I'll go to the next one.
At the top. In. Across. Around. That's the shoulder. Yeah. Is it not good? And then up.
Or under.
It's very light, wasn't it?
So then I did to get the fish tail.
Yeah, how did you make it look nice? You literally just spread it out here and then you can pull it up. So this one's just a little short. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So instead of it being dead straight at the bottom, you just sort of lay it out a little bit,
Okay.
and then you've got more to work and you flip up and under.
Okay.
And yes, that's a nice.
Beautiful. Like a little mermaid.
Yes, like a little mermaid. Yeah, you want that little mermaid tail, that fish tail at the bottom. Cool. So have a little look at this worksheet then. If you've done the before, flip it over and do the after baby and see how you rearrange all of that time. Oh, sorry, they're different. They're on different sheets. They're normally upside down.
I was asleep.
How many? 99 sounds pretty good.
I do because I go to bed at like 8.
Perfect.
And what's that? Words / doors. Yeah. Oh, never mind. I was just maybe 10 because we also. Yeah. How many have we got left over? 4. Yeah, that's probably about correct. All right.
You're taking that, you're taking that, Henry, what you're gonna find out.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, good. Okay.
They probably look quite different for you versus your partner too, because guys, you like you'll go back to work.
I can go to work, right? And on 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
Then you'll tell me you. Forward.
Feeding.
4 hours.
4 hours.
Remember that we said babies feed 8 to 10 times in 24 hours?
And does every feed take about how long?
Sometimes it can take an hour, sometimes it can take 10 minutes.
Yeah. I'd say probably 20 to 30 minutes is pretty average for a feed.
But 4 hours.
They're not
4
4
or
hours.
5 hours. For feeding.
One hour. And then the rest spent with you kind of sleeping again. Yeah. What's this? Puppies. Yeah, I'm probably not going to get any puppies. Yeah. I'll probably try to get my sleep and then puppies.
Sleeping is become the primary hobby.
Yeah, that's true. All right, you can do yours now.
Oh.
At least work is just for an hour.
3 hours a day. 3, 4 hours a day. Before it is.
Sorry. Don't mind me.
You're watching me well. You're watching me after.
So don't get too hung up on it. Just a little bit of a visual representation, a bit of a an idea of how your life changes. You kind of have to think about where are you going to pull your hours from in your pre-baby life to make up for that extra circle that you've got in your life now, which is your baby and all of those needs that your baby has got. So spending time with your baby and responding to their needs and you know, doing all of that just development stuff, you know, talking to them, reading, singing, tummy time, that sort of stuff will take up a fair bit of time. Obviously not initially, because a lot of the time in that first few weeks or so will be just sleeping and eating and adjusting to a day and night routine and things like that. But yeah, obviously there will be more and more time given to your baby as they grow too. So I've got a little video here for us to watch. Emily Lowe is from CAMS in Port Pirie. So CAMS is Child Adolescent Mental. But she's fantastic. She has got this talk that we'll play in a sec. And really, I find it, as even as a step parent, I find it really reassuring that I'm doing an okay job as a parent. And she will just talk about the emotional needs of your baby and how you respond to their mental health and how you raise a baby that can cope with stresses in the world and things like that. So I'll shut up and we'll just watch the video.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Lowe and I am one of the senior occupational therapists working at Child Adolescent Mental Health Service based in Port Pirie. So for those of you who don't know, CAMS is a service for young people, children and their families aged 0 to 16, and we work more with that pointy end sort of mental health presentation. Typically, We're best known for our work with adolescents, sometimes young people getting into a bit of trouble at home, a bit of trouble at school. But we certainly do work with the very young end of that age spectrum. And for me, that is my particular interest, is working with parents and their infants. Hence why I come along to today's class to speak to you about the emotional needs of your baby and the emotional demands of parenting. So as I said, I'm based in CAMS in Port Pirie, but CAMS is a statewide service and is the free mental health service for young people. So you can see CAMS in Port Pirie, but also every other region across metro and country South Australia. My background is that I'm an occupational therapist, and I have a particular interest in perinatal and infant mental health. So I, a number of years ago, did my master's in that area. Typically, the way that CAMS works is a lot of talking therapy, but obviously with young children, that looks a lot different. So we use a lot of play-based therapy. We run parenting groups from time to time, and we certainly interact in that space around supporting not only the infant, but also the parents in that dyad. The reason why I come to this particular stage of antenatal class is because you do have some talk around the emotional side of parenting. And in my work, in my clinical work, typically I speak to lots of parents. And what I know is that you're bombarded with lots of advice and information, particularly at this time, because there's so much happening. What I tend to speak to parents about is that there's common themes around what they expected parenting to be like, and then what the reality of that is. There's also a lot of focus on the practical side of parenting, which of course is extremely important. It's important to know how to feed your baby, how to wrap your baby, all of those things, but not so much information around the emotional side of parenting, which can be the thing that catches us off guard. Because I think practically most of us are pretty capable. We can do those practical things, but sometimes the emotional component of parenting is a little bit more difficult. I think also because you do get lots of handouts and information, it's always good to know there is local contacts, people that actually do this work that live in your communities. So I think that's always important as well. I guess when we think about parenting from an emotional perspective, what we know is when you fall pregnant and you are becoming a parent, it's natural to start reflecting on how you were parented. So sometimes what happens is this phenomenon of ghosts in the nursery, which essentially are these thoughts and feelings that come to mind that previously you haven't experienced in your life because you haven't thought about being a parent prior to this. So we do normal things like, you know, I hope to do that like my mum, or I'm not going to do that like my dad. And I guess for some people, reflecting on their parenting history can be a really positive experience. But for some people, that can be really difficult as well. And that can be a really challenging concept. The other thing we know about parenting emotionally is that, you know, parenting requires you to not only manage your own big feelings, which as an adult doing 24/7 is tricky enough as it is, but now you need to do it for your infant who you're very emotionally connected with, and you know, might be on the top of, you know, recovering from the birth and, you know, sleep deprivation, all these things. So it's a pretty tough gig. Positively, though, what we know is that your babies, even in utero now, in your stomachs, are hardwired to be in relationship with you. There's amazing research that's done around, you know, babies from as little as 1 day old showing clear preference for their parents. So our kids are hardwired to be in relationship with us. And if we get it wrong, they keep trying. We talk about at CAMS the idea of good enough parenting. So we're not aiming for perfect parenting because that's kind of unrealistic. We talk about this 30% rule. So over the years, a lot of research shows us that if you can kind of get it right about 30% of the time, you will generally raise a pretty well-functioning young person. So even for myself, on my tough parenting days, I always remind myself of 30%. It feels a bit more achievable. We also know that a strong relationship is the best predictor of all ladder development. So when you have your babies and perhaps you're going to play groups or in your parent groups, etc., there's lots of talk about whose baby is rolling, whose baby is talking first, all those things. And yes, they're exciting and important. But what we know is that if your relationship with your baby is in a good space, generally all that other development just falls into place. So if you think about this in regards to a friendship, what we know is that, with a good friend, it just feels easy, doesn't it? You don't need to try out the relationship. It just happens naturally. You might not see each other for months on end, but you can just pick up where you left off. And effectively, that is what we're aiming for in the parent-child relationship. So one of the best ways I know how to describe all this in a visual way is by using this diagram here, which comes from the Circle of Security. So if you are interested in this stuff, the Circle of Security have a fabulous website, which you can go on and watch lots of videos about. And you might notice in your local communities, different organisations, whether they be NGOs or children's centres, etc., play groups, are running the Circle of Security parenting program. And I would highly recommend you doing that if you have an interest or just want to know a bit more about it. So effectively for me, I always think about this stuff in regards to my own experience of parenting and my clinical work. And I grew up in a family of 6 children. So I sort of always wondered, we have all the same parents. How are we all so different? You would think if we were all parented in the same way, we would be the same people times 6. So this diagram is a really helpful way to explain some of those things. So effectively, this diagram has 3 parts. The first part being the hands there. So the hands represent you as parents. So you are considered the secure base, the safe haven for your children. Our hands people in our life can be with us at our best, but also when we're at our very worst. So for anyone, whether you be a baby, whether you be an adult, it's so important to have a hands person in your life. So for some people in an ideal world, that is their mum or dad. But unfortunately, not all people have that relationship with their mum or dad. So it might be a grandparent, it might be a trusted friend, it could be a teacher. But the main important thing is just that those people have hands people in their life. So what we do is we start from our secure base, our safe haven, and then we go out on the top of the circle. So you can see the image there of the child exploring their world. Toddlers are a great example of this. They'll walk or crawl out, they'll touch things, they'll, make mistakes, and that's them exploring their world. Even little babies from newborn, they will give you eye gazes, and then they'll look away and explore their world. They'll bring their fist to their mouths and explore their world through those behaviours. When we've had enough exploring, what we tend to do is come on to the bottom of the circle. And the bottom of the circle, if you can imagine a cup, we all have an emotional cup in our lives, and sometimes that runs low. When it's low, we need to get it filled back up, and who better to do that than our secure base, safe haven people. So we come into ideally our mum or dad, and we get that emotional filling up. So sometimes this looks beautiful, like the little image there where our children reach out to us for cuddles and comfort, but sometimes it doesn't always look that lovely. It might be through some negative behaviour sometimes, because what we know is getting some connection is better than none. So we'll try and get it any way we can. No one in this world can exist without being in relationship. So getting our emotional cup and having someone organise our feelings is super important. I think sometimes in my clinical work at CAMS, we see young people that haven't had the best parenting experience, and they use maladaptive ways to get connection and get that emotional cup filled. So it doesn't always look nice like this, but sometimes underneath that behaviour is just a young person longing for connection and needing their emotional cup filled. So here we've got pictures of infants going out exploring, checking in, and this happens hundreds of thousands of times a day. And it looks different at different ages, and we could substitute these baby pictures for pictures of adults, because effectively this is what we all do in relationship. We explore, we check in. So for some people in this circle, they have strengths and struggles. So for me personally, I have a strength on the top of the circle. I like exploring. I like being independent. Being on the top of the circle feels really comfortable for me. But I have siblings who spend more time on the bottom of the circle, who need some more checking in, but are really great with big feelings. So for instance, my mum will call me and say, "Are you still alive? We haven't heard from you." Whereas she'll say about my sibling, you know, they've been here every day this week, because it's just the different things that we need on the circle. So having that awareness of where you might have your strengths and struggles on that circle is really, really important, because having your babies, they will be doing this circle, and it'll be important to know where perhaps you have a level of comfortability, but also where you might have a level of anxiety around their different patterns of behaviour. So the key messages here. One of the main things that I want to have you as a takeaway from the session is that both babies and parents need emotional filling up. We can't survive in this world without having an emotional full cup. That's why sometimes I always think of that analogy on the plane, you know, the oxygen mask drops. It's important to fit yours before the person next to you, because of course, if you can't breathe, you know, no help to the person next to you. And that is the same for emotions. It's really hard to do parenting with an empty cup. So it's important to make sure you make the time to make sure your cup is full to be able to, you know, give your best to your infant. Parenting can and will trigger big feelings in you. So it's really important you make sense of those. This is why, you know, big feeling states are catching. This is why if we go to the movie theatre and we watch a really sad movie, we cry, because, you know, big feelings are catching. And the tricky thing is your infants are going to elicit even more emotions from you than perhaps you realised you had. So it will be, again, really important to manage those big feeling states and take the time to do some of that reparative work. It's important to recognise where you have you and your baby have strengths and struggles on that circle and what that might be about. And, you know, where you and your partner or you and your mum or you and your friend have struggles, because in your support circle for your infant, it's really important to make sure all of those needs are getting met for the baby on that circle. Other things to remember are that every behaviour has a function. So sometimes it doesn't always look like, you know, your child cueing you for, you know, exploration or coming in for cuddles and comfort. It can sometimes look a little bit messy or behaviours that maybe aren't ideal, but just to remember that they're all very purposeful and the end goal always is around connection seeking. And the last point there, it's never too late. It's never too late. You know, if you get it wrong, your babies are hardwired for relationships, so they will keep trying. They are the roadmap. Sometimes we just need to stop and see what's going on in plain sight in front of our eyes.
Cool. I can't tell you how many times I've had to remind myself of that 30% rule. It's so reassuring. Only 30%? That's nothing. Okay. We are getting there. Almost finished. So we talked a bit about tummy time. I think we've talked about most of this stuff as well. So common newborn issues, nappy rash, we touched on. I don't actually know how to pronounce that word in the middle. Yeah, no. Milk rash, newborn rash, milk pimples. Yeah, all of that. It doesn't look as bad in that photo as it does on this photo, but it can happen usually on babies' faces and chests, but they can have it all over their bodies. It's just a normal hormonal reaction to breast milk. So as long as you are breastfeeding that baby, your baby can have this rash that comes and goes, and it's not itchy like a rash or anything like that. It just is what it is. Jaundice, so you can see that baby looks quite yellow in the face, and the whites of his eyes are quite yellow as well. So we're checking babies in the first few days, in the first week or so, for any signs of jaundice, which can be an issue with too many red blood cells and they're not breaking them down quickly enough. And if that's not treated, it can lead on to liver issues and things like that. So it's quite severe if it's not treated, but we get onto it pretty quickly, and it's usually resolved really easily. Constipations are quite a common one, and wind and things like that. Breastfed babies actually don't need to necessarily poo every day. So can be really, really normal for breastfed babies to go days in between poos. Up to 8 to 10 days is normal. Okay. And that's just because the breast milk is so well absorbed and so well utilized that there's not a lot of waste products. So that's a good thing. We talked about that breast swelling and that sort of mini period, like fake period thing in baby girls. And obviously the breast swelling is can be in boys or girls as well. So there you go, some common things there. Baby first aid, so there is a course through Tiny Hearts available online, and in Adelaide that they also do sessions semi-regularly in Gladstone with Abby Hennessy, the doula. So if you jump onto her Instagram, I think it is, she often has upcoming sessions, so you can go and do a day of infant first aid or baby first aid. When you leave hospital, when you have your baby, you'll get a couple of things to go home with you. So the blue book here is really, really important. This is your baby's record of birth, immunizations, all of their health and development in terms of like weight and length and all that sort of thing, and yeah, their GP checks. So really important that you keep it safe. Please do not lose it. We fill it out at birth with all those birth details, you know, birth weight and all of those bits and pieces, whether they've had their first immunizations. And then we keep on filling this in each time we visit you postnatally. So we put all of baby's weights in there throughout that. There's lots of tabs in there. So there's immunization, there's growth and weight, there's a tab for teeth for when your baby starts cutting teeth. Hearing and vision, so we do the hearing screen in the first few days as well. So that gets recorded in there. And all, like I said, all of your GP checks. So take it with you for any GP checks or immunisation appointments as well. There is also a tab in there about milestones and development and sort of what's average at different stages of life. And then on the back, there's some useful contacts as well. So there's some phone numbers there for different, like I think there's like the poisons hotline and different bits and pieces like that. I think ABA's on there. CAFs, obviously, because CAFs put together the blue book. You will also get a pack with these two documents. So your parent pack has got the yellow Centrelink form. So that's the one that you'll fill out to get your baby on Medicare. And the pink registration form is for births, deaths and marriages. So that will register your baby as a person with their legal name. And you'll get your birth certificate through that. So you must register your baby with that pink form before you do your yellow form. They need to be a person before they get Medicare. We send a little card from the hospital to births, deaths and marriages saying that you've had your baby and the sex and the date and all the rest of it. So they know, and you've got 60 days from birth to lodge that form. Otherwise, they will be knocking on your door with a fine. Okay. So please don't forget and don't lose the paper. If you lose it, we can replace these things. That's totally fine. The blue book's a little bit harder to replace. Okay. Your parental leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
So typically parent two, usually the partner, the father of the baby, is eligible for a Centrelink parental leave payment for up to 2 weeks. Mums get 18 weeks through Centrelink. Okay, so again, you'll need to fill out the Medicare forms to lodge that before you can start getting your payments as well. That's it on that. What was the last bit that I was going to do with you? Just some extra little bits here about well-being and self-care, if this one ever wants to catch up. Stop doing it. I've given you as well a little sheet of extra resources too. So you can have a look at that, and if there's any websites that you want to check out, there's like a farm safe one, and there should be one in there about introducing pets to your baby as well, all of that sort of thing too. So plenty of good resources on that little sheet. But yeah, obviously you've got us and up to 6 weeks after you have your baby. So we're right on time, but we did finish slightly late. So I do want to finish off with one little activity with you guys. And that is we'll do this last activity, and I'll send out a video that we didn't get to this today as well, so you can watch. It's another really good one about brain development. Where am I? We'll just finish off with something quick and fun.
We get a graduation certificate.
Hey, that'd be cool. So here you go. Have a pack of smileys each. Grab 2 for each of you. Random ones. Don't look at these.
Oh, we got the exact same.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Did one of us grab something different?
No, you don't have to. It depends what the question is, I suppose. All right. Who wants to start? What color have you guys got?
Pink and yellow.
Pink and yellow? All right, we'll start with pink. What's been your favorite thing about this pregnancy?
I feel like it's been a very good bonding experience for us
As a couple?
as a couple.
Yeah. Good bonding experience. That's nice.
Lovely to feel Stanley kicking and, doing stuff inside my body.
Yeah.
Cool. Those movements. Cool. Do you want to do your second one, or should we do somebody else?
Do somebody else.
Okay. Amy? What color have you got?
Pink and green.
Pink and green. All right. Do you want to do green then? What are you most looking forward to after your baby's born? Everybody got pink, eh? Apart from you. What are you most looking forward to? Are you looking forward to meeting your baby and seeing what they look like? You looking forward to not being pregnant? Are you looking forward to eating sushi? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Very nice. All right. What colors have you got? Blue and
orange.
blue and orange. Which one do you want to do? Okay. What have you learned in class you found the most interesting or surprising? The leg tabs around the nappies. Perfect. And what, sorry? And the wetness indicator? Yeah, cool. There you go. Beautiful. All right, what's your pink and yellow? Did you guys get the exact same colors?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, you better do yellow then. For the birth.
For the actual birth, I think we really want to be very connected throughout the entire
Mhm.
process.
Oh, you guys are too cute. Want to be connected through the birth. Okay. In what way? How do you see that happening?
Like holding her hand, being with her the entire time, being an active part of the birthing process.
Very nice.
And,
Active support and encouragement.
yeah, not
Yeah.
just being in a room.
Yeah.
Just waiting.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Aw, you guys are so sweet. Beautiful. Do you guys want to, any of you want to answer any of the other questions that we didn't have?
What were the other ones?
What's the brown one? What's one piece of advice you've heard that you think you'll use in your parenting? Don't listen to other people's advice. That's good advice. I like it. Which parent do you think will be the strict parent? Fingers pointing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
depending on the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're both teachers, so
Yeah.
being a strict parent.
We both
That's
have
right.
pretty high expectations. Yeah.
Do you know when my partner and I got together? Obviously, he's got a son, so he was already doing the parenting thing. But when we got together, I really thought he was going to be the strict parent because he's quite type A and like very like organized and structured. And I'm like, yeah, go with the flow, whatever. But I'm the strict parent. I'm the one that's like, we've got to have structure and we've got to have a routine, and like he's got to know the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I went with straight away.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. It's funny, isn't it? Okay, the red one. How have any of you been documenting your pregnancy? No? No.
Occasionally I'll be like, take a photo of me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Usually I'm holding a duck at the time
Yeah.
because I've been raising ducks.
Oh, okay. Not just a random like, let's go down to the park and find a duck. Oh, that's funny. Beautiful. All right. Have you guys got any questions about anything that we've gone over in the last 3 weeks? I hope you guys have enjoyed it and learned something.
Yeah, it's been great.
I do apologize for being here last week.
No, that's okay. I've sent out the recording, so if you want to check back in with that one, you can, and you've got my number, so you can flick through any questions or speak to your wife. That's totally fine too. But thank you for being here, especially with how wet and gross it is today.
Thank you for teaching us so much about how to take care of our baby.
Of course. All the best. Go forth and have an awesome birth and an awesome baby.
We will.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming, guys, and all the best.
Cheers. Do you want your baby back?
Yeah, I suppose. That one doesn't cry, so I'll have that one. And thanks to everybody at home. If anybody's watching the recording, I appreciate it.
That's all.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.